Restaurant Unstoppable, episode 625 with Chef Eric Warnstedt. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, Eric Warnstedt. Eric, are you feeling unstoppable today?
We're feeling unstoppable.
Yeah. Yes, that is what we like to hear. So originally from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Eric Warnstedt is a graduate of Johnson & Wales University, North Miami. 6 years after making the move north to Vermont in October of 2005, alongside business partner William McNeil, Warnstedt opened Hen of the Wood Waterbury. It would be the beginning of a commitment to amazing farmers, cheesemakers, and others who've made Vermont so special. Fast forward to the current date, and the team has scaled their operation to include Hen of the Wood, Burlington, Dock Ponds, Eat and Drink, Stowe, and Prohibition Pig, just down the street from their original Hen of the Wood in Waterbury, Vermont. I cannot wait to get into your story, but let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
I think that in the early days with Judy Rogers' first cookbook, she made a quote saying something like, if we can find a harder way to do it, we'll do it.
Nice.
And I think we've looked at that every step of the way.
What does that mean to you? How does that resonate with you?
Well, Hen of the Wood Waterbury was a tiny restaurant, small kitchen. Everything was pretty antiquated. So the idea of like keeping things really simple, but showcasing Vermont. So the only way to do it simple, but to do it properly, was all these other steps up to that. And that always sort of seemed like it coincided with her. How hard can we make this?
It's kind of like the object is the way mentality that, right. You know, go like if it's the path of most resistance, sometimes that will be the path worth taking because it reaps the most benefit. It's how you stand out. It's the right thing to do.
Sure. It all shined through.
Yeah. Awesome. I love it. So where does it make sense to start today's conversation? It sounds like you knew from a pretty young age that you were drawn to the hospitality industry. You went to college there. So when did you know for sure that this was going to be your path?
I went to Johnson & Wales right after I graduated from college. I started cooking my last year of college, and it really just all sort of clicked at a time when I wasn't sure what the next move was. I was in North Carolina at the time, which is where I'd gone to college. And the two guys that opened this restaurant in our college town, it seemed like they were having a good time. It seemed like it was all working for them. All my friends went to get a job there to be servers. I had never worked in a restaurant. He asked if I could work in the kitchen. You know, fast forward, and like that's how the ball got started. So graduated college, had about 6 months to hang out at a small bed and breakfast in the mountains, and then started the more serious culinary career.
So where'd you originally go to school? What was your
place called High Point University?
What were you majoring originally?
I have a business degree, which
okay, that's good to have.
It's a little bit more bong hits and frisbee at the time, but I always thought I would sort of move into more like a real estate or something in that vein. I had some family in that world.
But I mean, you are in real estate. I mean, the restaurant industry encompasses all of those things:
sure.
Business, real estate. There's just so many variables to it. So, you got this job working in the kitchen. Was it your senior year in college?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
What was your original impression of the industry?
Well, at the time, I think these guys put off perhaps the wrong image of what it was like. They seemed to be much cleaner, wealthier, and not working as hard as it really turned out to be. Consequently, they only lasted a few years, I think. But at the beginning, it was really cool food for this little town. It had a really fun vibe to it. Their energy was really high. And it just seemed like something that I could put my heart and soul into, really, after 4 years of goofing around in college, not really exactly sure what I was going to be doing. Once I got out of college, I definitely put my head down, knife sharp, and didn't goof. I mean, we goof around a lot and have fun, but I was really serious about getting the career going.
Yeah. So without tearing these guys too much of a new asshole, reflecting back, knowing what you know now, reflecting back what it was like to be in that operation, what
idiots.
Get a little bit deep. Idiots.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So what would
they got the place open? So that's an enormous step in itself. But after that, they seem to do every step.
Give me some examples of things that are not right, in case somebody who's listening to this is like, "Oh shit, we do that. We should probably cut the shit."
Whether it was how alcohol was used, drugs were used, relationships with women, general vibe right behind the scenes.
Got you.
Just a touch on the non-sustainable side.
Okay.
And I think they got behind on tax payments and doing all the things that you just shouldn't do. Like run down the checklist. If I open a restaurant, what should I not do? They seem to check every one of those.
So was it just the there was something that appealed to you about the industry because you ended up pursuing it full time thereafter.
Yeah, at the time, being in North Carolina, backpacking, getting a little bit more in touch with nature. Growing up in Florida, actually, we had the Everglades just down the street, the beach on the other side, the Keys to the south of us. So even though it was suburban Fort Lauderdale, I feel like I had a pretty natural experience, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
We vacationed a lot in North Carolina, which a lot of Floridians do. And by the time I got to college, it really clicked about sort of that side, being in the mountains, spending a lot of time outdoors, hiking, mountain biking, a lot of fishing, all that sort of stuff. That coincided, I think that environmental interest coincided with a direction that food was going. And I think I got lucky to see the right cookbooks at the right time.
Which cookbooks were these?
It was like the early Alice Waters stuff, anything mostly from the West Coast at that time. The Jeremiah Towers of the world and a handful of others that seemed to, and enough books were out at that point where all you would do is like go to Barnes and Nobles and flip through books, and they were all so in, like the Inn at Little Washington, that was an enormous one. Right after that, the French Laundry came out. And that was a great stretch of books for those handful of years, and I feel like I slid in just the right time. Like I'm 43 now. We got to catch all of the celebrity chef stuff, and we were lucky to be just barely dipping our toe in that world, but it never went to the next level. We stayed pretty grounded being in Vermont or the places that I worked at.
Yep.
So I feel like I slid into the industry just at the right time. It's probably a roundabout answer, but the environmental component, feeling that I could do this, it seemed to just coincide and be the right thing to do.
Got you.
Yeah.
Do me a quick favor. Pull that mic just a little bit closer. No, you're good. You're good. So just doing some simple math. I'm guessing you graduated around 97 from your primary
97.
97. Yep. And you did what, 1 year, 2 years at?
So I did a 2-year program at Johnson & Wales. That's what you could do. No, it was just a year program.
Okay.
Because if you already had a bachelor's degree, it was straight culinary. So I got in and out of there as quick as possible.
So you had about a year from graduating from Johnson & Wales to making your move up to Vermont in 1999.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So what happened in that year before that transition north?
Well, there was a little bit roundabout story, but I stayed in North Carolina before culinary school and worked at this inn. After culinary school, I went to Colorado for a little while and worked at the Peaks Resort in Telluride, which was the only large property I've ever worked at, but it was a really special experience. And actually moved to Vermont my first time after that internship and worked at Chevron Farms here, which is, if you haven't been, it's a stunning piece of property.
Okay.
Left in the winter, came back, left in the winter again, came back. The third time I stayed for good, which was 2001. So I've been here full time since 2001.
Got you. Any mentors, any key players up to this point that helped form and mold who you are today as a professional?
Back then, it was really, really cookbook based. I feel like I never took enough time to travel to work with that really special chef. I've worked for a lot of really good people, really solid people from a morals and value judgment. I haven't worked for great chefs of the world. But those years, honestly, to go back to it, all those cookbooks were my first management job. I had the opportunity to just do specials every day. So for those next 3 years or so, it was every day was just cooking out of those books and morphing them to my own.
Okay.
Yeah.
So reflecting back at these individuals, and that's a huge point to point out right now. A lot of people will say, I need a mentor. There are countless mentors that exist online in books or blogs or whatever. There's influence out there. Go out there and let yourself be influenced by all these incredible resources that exist today. Like, you can be influenced. I mean, the best thing is having that person right next to you, that mentor that's willing to coach you, but that isn't an excuse to not try to get influenced some way, somehow.
Sure.
Do you want to reflect on that?
Well, now if we were to fast forward, there are a few other people, a gentleman by the name of Chris Goss, who's doing a lot of hospitality consulting, but used to live up here, and it's a family friend. He is starting a company called Awakened Hospitality. Honestly, I'd love to plug him just because what he's doing is outstanding. Other podcasts and more business management, leadership focused mentors as opposed to food mentors. At this point, we're 5 years in to me not cooking regularly, which is, it still feels weird. Like going to work and sitting in an office. I may be here for a long day, but it's not work.
So 5 years in, since 2014, you've kind of removed yourself from the kitchen to work on the business.
Yeah, once we had 2 restaurants, my role just changed a lot because we had to have a body in each place.
I want to get to that. We're definitely going to get into that transition, but I want to stay chronological because I'm curious. Aside from the cookbooks, I mean, you have the cookbooks. Aside from the recipes in the cookbooks, which one of these book mentors influenced you the most? Because I know they share a lot about their stories, their values, their philosophies.
Sure.
Who had the biggest imprint on you?
You know, Corey Schreiber was at a place called Wildwood in Portland. They've since closed, but I worked there for a little while, and that cookbook was pretty inspirational.
What was it? What was the inspiration?
You know, it's something there's a vibe to them. You know, a connection to nature, a connection to a sense of place. You would know if you picked that book up that dude is from Oregon, and that's what's going on there. Saying like the Alice Water vegetable book, like it has a sense of place, a sense of time. I think that really appealed to me, and I knew quickly, at least I felt in my soul, that maybe there could be the opportunity to be a bigger fish in a small pond in Vermont. Yeah, and like the whole farming thing, it was real easy to grab onto.
Yeah, and what you're pointing out right now was what was happening in like the late 80s into the early 90s with Alice Water in California, and then you had it in Portland, Oregon, and it was happening again. But you had this sense of like sourcing from the community, sourcing from what's right out your front door, and you can tell that those values from these cookbooks were imprinted into you, because that's kind of been the backbone of your business, is that locally sourced, this robust pond of resources you have right out your back door, being in Vermont, and you were kind of one of the first people to really leverage that immediate abundance of resources. Is that safe to say?
I think that we were the first restaurant in that new age of, you know, content-driven magazine, television show. You know, when we opened 10, and I'll try to go chronological, but when we opened 10, I was 29. We were doing some fun stuff, you know, young, eager. We were in this really rad old building that's 250 years old. I think it just hit all the things. It was like, oh, you should maybe go check that place out.
So what happened? Like, what were the series of events where this opportunity even became a possibility? Were there any middle points between 2002 and 2005 that set you up for success?
I had always goofed around with writing a business plan. There was another opportunity at a place on the waterfront where they were like calling all business plans. So that was the first time really putting it together. The lady that owns the building where the first hen is, we crossed paths with her in Burlington, and she was having issues with the restaurant that was in that space and trying to get them out via legal means. And I loosely said, with no money in my pocket, should you win in court, let me be the first person you call. Ooh. And like 6 months later, she's like, hey, this is so-and-so. The space is available if you want it.
And there's a big lesson there too. If you want something, let it be known.
Put it out. I fully believe that, yeah.
Put it into the universe, because the universe can't answer you unless you let it be known. And sometimes people just keep their desires, their wants inside, and then when the building does become available, or the property does become available, and it goes away real fast, you know, like what damage are you doing being proactive, saying, if for whatever reason you decide to close or this becomes available, like, I am interested.
Yeah. I have no problem with the risk, no problem with the pressure that would have come with.
Yeah.
I was totally ready and accepting of that, and made a few calls to family, friends. And
so go ahead.
No, just, it was a lot of money to me at the time to open that restaurant. But, you know, when I look at like how we have to do things today, it was, you know, pennies. So it was, you know, luckily there was a restaurant there. There was a hood system there.
So you said you came back to Vermont and you were here steady from 2002 on. Mm-hmm. What was going on between 2002 and 2005?
So this restaurant in Shelburne, Vermont, called Chevron Farms. It's a full working farm. It's really special if you can check it out. They're only open seasonally. So I had finished my internship in Telluride, and a friend from college had moved up here, and she said, you should come check it out. I think you'd like it. I flew to visit, went back, told my chef I wasn't staying, and drove my car out to Vermont.
What was it that made you just make that instant decision? Like, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, if you drove up onto Shelburne Farms, you'd probably like maybe throw it away for a minute and say, oh, I think I could probably do this. It's really special. Yeah. And, you know, a couple college friends were here, so it seemed like a decent place to land. At the time, though, I was super footloose. I had no plans on staying here. I always planned on being back in the mountains of North Carolina or somewhere in North Carolina. I wanted to keep traveling a bunch. So that season ended shortly after I got here. Did I settle in Vermont at the time? And the answer was like, no, there was nothing to do here that I was interested in. So I went to Portland for a little bit.
Portland, Oregon?
Okay. Came back, did the Chevron Farms experience again. Went to Atlanta after that for a little bit just to help a chef friend. Came back when the season opened. And then that closed in October. And after that point, I stayed here for good. There was a management position that was opening at a place called Smoke Jacks.
Okay.
Which was sort of like pretty hip place, downtown Burlington, sourcing a good bit locally. They were hiring for a sous chef. And at the time, to me, like the idea, like I can be a sous chef and, after talking to them, be able to do my thing a little bit.
Was this your first sous position?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was that transition to the sous position, like first leadership position?
Yeah, it was great for my food. I think I was a horrible leader.
Why? What made you a horrible leader?
I just was concerned about cooking my food. Yeah.
Okay.
And I was super lucky to be able to play every day. Like I ran the line working saute, but as long as I got there early enough, I could do any special I wanted and things like that. So really every day, to say I cooked through those books is not an exaggeration.
So how did your food evolve during this time? What was it?
Because it wasn't a full dish that I was interested in. It was, and luckily my brain was, I can barely do any math, but I can remember a cookbook and a recipe pretty easily, or at least the vibe of it. So I remember that thing from that one dish, this thing from this one dish. This feels like it has, or even if it's the optics, it feels like it could be a Vermont rooted dish. The ingredients that I'm going to go purchase are from somewhere around here. And all of a sudden that dish has soul, has reason to exist. There's a reason why it's on the plate. It's not just, what I really hated at the time was the beginning of this international pantry. Like you can cook any food you want any day of the week. It has no soul, no roots. Like, why would I be cooking? Why would I be rolling sushi? Like,
Yeah.
I have no history with sushi. My family's not Japanese. I didn't vacation in Japan. Like, so it made sense that even though the North Carolina Vermont connection was weak, it made sense in my mind, like where those environmental connections to the roots of American food sort of came to current day.
Yeah.
That's what I was really excited in.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So one question that's really poking at me right now is that you mentioned earlier that you kind of had a false reality of the industry when you first got started, because what you're looking at wasn't the best example of a well-run business with these gentlemen in North Carolina.
Sure.
When did that change? When did your perception of the reality of the industry start to come into frame?
I don't think that there was I understood the reality then. Those things I could see what could be done right and what was be doing wrong, what was happening that was wrong, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't think it wasn't there at the beginning.
Okay.
What wasn't there at the beginning was being a good leader, trying to build up a team, which is all the stuff we talk about now. The past couple of years, that is our only concern. Like my chefs know me, they know my program. They have full control to do what they want for the most part.
So I'm curious, because you said even up to this last your last position before Hen of the Woods,
I did have two other
I keep on
jobs.
throwing that S on the woods.
That's okay.
When did you start to develop these leadership skills? When did you start to get an idea and a knack for what it takes to lead and manage and be a business owner?
And I'd love to ask some of our early managers that question.
Maybe I'll ask.
I think, though, honestly, at the small businesses that are owner run, if there's soul and there's heart there, people are going to follow you, even if you're not doing it right. And once Hen opened, that's different than when I was a sous chef at Smoke Jacks, or there were a couple other spots in the middle there before Hen. But with regard to a small business, sole proprietor, chef-owned restaurant, if you have soul and believe in what you're doing, I think people will follow you, even if you're not the best leader. Once you have more than one place, once you maybe have 3 or 4 places, how does the new guy connect with that original magic juju, or that goose that laid the golden egg at Hen Waterbury? How does that new guy feel that? So that's all about us managing and leading properly, treating our managers properly, giving them what they need so that they go on and continue what we originally started and do it in our vein with our value system, our morals, et cetera, et cetera. So that I could really talk about all hour long.
I'm making a note. We're coming back to that. How to manage properly and pass soul on. Okay, you're about to tell us about how this whole opportunity came to be Hen of the Wood.
Within a couple hours, I had made a call to the guy who was my grill cook at more than one restaurant. A guy, when I became a chef for a short while, I went back to smoke shacks for a short while as the chef.
Okay.
Before Hen presented itself. Don't worry, there won't be a test about the chronological. There is a lot of movement there. But this one guy moved with me as a sous chef, grill cook, and then a sous chef. He was like, I think, my first call. Do you want to come in and do this? Either just come help me. We can do it together. I don't know what it is. Let's just figure out how to do this.
Okay.
The second call was to my family and then to another family friend. I knew at the time my family couldn't do much for me, but they did give me $15,000. I'd had my name on a piece of property somehow, and I was able to get another $15,000. And then I got 30 from my buddy and 30 from the family friend. So 90,000.
90,000.
Yeah. So super as fast as we could. We
Is
made
that all
those
you
calls.
needed?
That's all we did. Yeah.
Wow. So that's all you needed to put up front was 90,000 for the purchase of.
I would not recommend doing it like that. But there is a part of me that thinks if you really like believe it and think what you're doing is legit.
So when you say not doing it like that, be specific.
Not enough money, undercapitalized,
Okay.
really.
So you had just enough to basically get the property and to own it, but you didn't have any extra capital.
I can't remember how much we had in the bank when we opened. I'm sure it was $10,000 or something.
Yeah, it comes up often on the show when you're opening. Don't just get what you need. Usually the number is usually like 25% of whatever you think you need. Like add 25% to that, or even 50%. People say like double it if you can, because there's always going to be something.
I do think there's a difference in. It maybe sounds immature, but young, fired up, and excited business owner versus a more accomplished yada yada. You're looking at a program or you're looking at a space, and you're deciding if this model is going to work. Like sort of in the position we're in now. Back then, that like young fuel, we could have done it on $50,000. Yeah, we would have figured it out.
Yeah,
we took a few bucks home a month to like make sure we paid our bills, and it was just a small amount of us. It was a tiny business. It still is.
But there's something to be said too about putting yourself in the position where you need to make it work. I feel like people that are overcapitalized are just like, sweet, I have like this infinite like source of capital to draw from, and you just cut all the creativity out of it, and you just end up throwing money at projects, and you're not even paying attention to your expenses. But when you have a limited amount to work with, like that frontal lobe kicks into gear, and you just start making shit happen, and you get so creative, and there's verticals that you would have never explored otherwise. Do you think that's true with what?
100%. Yeah, definitely.
So. What was it like? You get the $90,000.
It's hard to remember actually, because I think it was without whining. Like it was so hard.
What was the hardest
physically hard, mentally hard. No one ever got sick those first couple of years. Everyone did 6 days a week. It was just a lot. Set up, build it up, and shut it down every day. And then we decided to close an extra day. We did 2 days off. After a handful of years, we hired another manager that allowed me to like get off the line certain times. I can't remember exactly, but if I needed to. I remember when my daughter was born, I think I was out of work for 36 hours or something. I don't even,
it's a vacation.
Maybe not even that much. I remember calling my buddy at like 1 a.m, be like, I'm not going to be in tomorrow. You got to figure it out.
So,
but I'll be in the next day.
With keeping our listeners in mind, people aspiring to improve or people looking to get into the industry, what advice do you have for that person listening about what you did right when you're sharing your story? Like, what did you do right? What did you wish you had done better? Reflecting back, knowing what you know now.
The first part is like, are you really, really serious? Is this your whole life? Can your whole life be given up to do this? And that sounds maybe a little self-righteous or something, but at the time, there was no other option. We would have failed had we tried to have another employee or treated it casually or didn't recognize every piece of dust, every tissue that was left on the ground. We saw everything. And I don't know if that's a trained thing. I think that's an owner thing. But sorry, I'm getting off topic.
No,
With regard to the advice, at this point, the undercapitalized is step one. Like, go sit down with other restaurant owners, sit down with other business owners, take as many notes as possible, take as many pictures as possible, write down every little thing that inspired you, that you ate, that you saw, whether it's a cool fork or a piece of art. Really build it in your mind's eye. But the bigger one, I really believe in my soul, more so than the capital, is can you really put your entire life into this? Is this really what you want?
Are you willing, right? Are you going to have that conversation? And I think we get so there's almost like a romance to the dream, right?
Sure.
We have this vision of what it's going to be like. Then there's the reality of it, and like. And honestly, with this podcast, I hope I talk more people out of getting into the industry and opening a restaurant than I do helping people open restaurants, because it's, are you willing? And people get trapped sometimes in this industry because they just don't really fully understand the commitment to running a business.
Well, and that's the terrifying part.
Yeah.
Like, knock on wood, we were really lucky. If we can jump to like, Hen of the Wood is open now, and how is that all working? After a couple of years, maybe 2 years, we had a really awesome write-up by Mark Bittman in the Times. USA Today did a travel piece, had a big picture of the Mill, which is the restaurant. Food and Wine gave us top 10 top 10 dishes of the year.
Wow.
It was this duck breast.
What was that like, starting to get like all this hard work?
Oh, it was rad. It was really special.
Starting to pay off.
Yeah, it was super special.
2 years, 24 months it took of 6 days a week. I think the biggest vacation you got was 36 hours. Like, it takes time. Are you willing to put that work in it? And how did you keep that work ethic going? How did you not lose hope during that first 2 years?
That's a great question. I think we were connected. Like, we were plugged in. Like, whether it was the farm or the commute, we're in a small town. Like, Hen isn't necessarily built for Waterbury. A lot of people are not coming to Hen, but enough tourists are driving through here. It just all clicked and felt like we're a part of this. Like, I don't know how to answer that, really.
Well, I mean,
we were just in it.
You kind of talked about it earlier, just the why, right? The reasons why you're getting into it. And if you have the right why, you can deal with any how. And the camaraderie, get into like the relationships, how tight that glue was between you and your people.
Well, and it's not just our people. It was the couple farmers that were in there. I met a handful of farmers at Smoke Jacks and at Chevron Farms, people that we still work with today, that, the day we opened Hen Waterbury, the whole list, back then we used to write like every farmer. So like each menu item took up a paragraph, which we've scrapped all that since then. But we started with an arsenal of dudes in our pocket that were like serious partners. Like, we have strong relationships with cheesemakers, the guy that brings our beef, the random vegetables, like serious relationships that I think we easily could have failed, but we were so connected with our crew, with the whole scene, that it makes, and I hope this doesn't sound cocky, it makes sense that it didn't fail. Not because it was good, but because we were connected and we were part of it all.
You had the support of one another. Yeah. And it wasn't just you. Like, you wouldn't be failing. Like, it would take the whole tribe failing to go down. But when you have that support system, right, and you're doing it for each other, I don't want to put words into your mouth.
No, and it comes down, you mentioned the why, which is something we talk about a lot now. We didn't talk about that back then, but it shows that deeper reason for being here, I think, pushed us along. There was some strong values, some strong, moral compass was pretty straight, and I think it made sense that we were able to rise to the top, whether you had a good or a bad meal.
Yeah. One variable we haven't talked much about yet is your business partner, William McNeil. So when did he come to the picture? Was he here from day one?
No, Will wasn't from day one, but shortly after, 6 or 7 months. He came on as a dining room manager, and he actually was a culinary intern of mine at Smoke Jacks.
Oh, okay. Where was he studying?
He was at CIA.
Okay, cool.
So then we didn't see each other for a few years. He answered the ad. We see him walking up to do the interview, and next thing you know, he actually didn't even have any real front of the house experience, and I think it just shows like we liked him. We can teach you this.
But what was it about him early on that appealed to you so much?
Will bought in immediately. It wasn't like, hey man, I've been here for 10 hours. It was like, oh, if you're going to be there, I'm going to be there. You're going to do an event, I'm going to do the event. So we were
commitment.
Full on. So in 2012, when we were maybe 2011, when we knew restaurant number 2 was coming, we went out to dinner, William and his wife and myself, and said, why don't you come in 50-50? And it was, just a certain small amount of money at the time. And they took the weekend to think about it. I don't remember. I brought him down to the Beard Awards.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think it reminded him that this is all cool.
Okay.
I tricked him into coming back.
I want to get deeper into that. But I'm curious. So you didn't open the second Hen of the Wood until 2012, 2013. So almost 8 years had passed with one restaurant, one location. What did that evolution look like with one location to get you to the point where you're confident you can manage two? Take us through that evolution in the early days.
Sure. Well, once we did, which I can't remember what year, I won the, excuse me, the Food and Wine Best New Chef. After that happened, we were busy enough that we could at least forecast somewhat. I actually borrowed $200,000 from locals and cleaned up all of our books. So that's a whole nother wedge of the story of how Hen worked, because now we know what we're doing enough.
Yeah.
We've messed up a little bit. This kitchen is a dump. Hey guys, can I borrow some money? Here's how I can pay you back. They knew us super well. We got the money super easily. We redid some kitchen stuff, cleaned up some random debt, cleaned up some books, started at zero with a little bit of cash in the bank.
I think you're bringing up a really important part right now. A lot of people, I think they try to scale before they plug the holes. And you were smart enough to say, okay, this is where we're at. We have tons of opportunity, but before diverting our attention to location number 2 or a new project, what can we do at home to make this operation to as tight as possible, to clean up our obligations, our debt, and to fix whatever we can fix here and make this as strong as possible before moving on to the next. Do you want to reflect more on that?
I mean, that you summed it all up. We had slipped on some meals and rooms taxes. We had who knows what. And we needed a lot of work done, like just random stuff. The place, if you were to see pictures of the kitchen back then in the dish pit, it was awful. It just wasn't a nice place to work, like visually unattractive, just dirty and old from the restaurant before us. We had done minor upkeep or minor repairs throughout our time, but this was now a chunk of change in our pocket to like retile this, some new dish equipment, a new range. Debt is clean. All bills are paid. We're at zero with a few bucks in the bank. I know exactly how I can pay these people back every quarter. It was super easy. They were totally happy to be a part of it. And
yeah. One of the biggest lessons I've learned doing all these interviews now is that growth comes from within. I think a lot of people, when they think of growth, they think of going out. Like, we need to expand out. But if you take that energy and you put it into making what you have as tight as possible, as impressive as possible, like, that outward growth comes organically because people will throw opportunities at you, right? So
which is exactly how this is all played out.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure we'll get into the details as we go. So you sit down with Will and his wife. You say, hey, 50-50 partner. Most people in that scenario, you've built this thing for the past 8 years. Like, it's time to reap the benefit. And a lot of people will say, don't get into partnerships. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I agree with that. Like, why were you willing to give up 50% of everything that you worked so hard for? Like, why was that worth it?
Sure. Yeah. And a lot of people, or at least like do, 70-30 or 60. At the time, Will had been gone for about 11 months. He went to sell wine. He got out of the business, reconnected, they were newly married, et cetera, et cetera. He had still been really close to us and obviously watching everything happen. So he had been out. So with that whole bringing him to the Beard Awards is how I really tricked him in for real. But Will is a you'll see when you chat with him, we really couldn't be more different.
A little bit of a teaser there. Will's coming up next. We're going to do it back to back. I'm pumped.
I'm a little bit more big picture, dreamery, whatever, whoever can fill in the words. Will is much more specific, has some other things on lockdown. We have two sets of strengths that I think I see how partners have ups and downs. We've never even really had a fight, much less, we each have our strengths, and I think we're okay with what the other's roles are. As we've grown, we've tried to do some exercises in putting our roles on paper so that new people that meet us, like new staff, we can be like, here's who we are. This is our story worth living. This is why we do what we do. Here's my roles. Here's Will's roles. They can get to know us a little bit more than just like, what are those two guys who are now mostly in the office doing?
I think we're going to pull back some layers on that when we start talking about managing the soul, right, and passing that soul on to the next generation. But let's keep that teaser rolling. What were you going to say?
So probably just backing up to Will. It was our strengths that and our differences that I knew we couldn't grow without a buddy. I think my ego is not that big to where I couldn't share all this.
Yes.
And to go bigger, like our Hen Burlington is a completely different project than Hen of the Wood Waterbury. Like, we raised a lot of money. It's beautifully designed. There's a lot of staff. it has all the things that we ever wanted, which now I don't cook and I didn't even get to cook on all this stuff. It's like all the wood-fired grill, the wood-fired oven, this beautiful bar. Hen Waterbury is only 40 seats. It's mostly reservation only because it's so tiny. You can't just pop in, have a drink or some oysters. So Hen Burlington, full bar. You can sit on the kitchen line. You don't need reservations for either of those. It's all the stuff that we wished we could do. Turn the radio up a little bit. Like, let's party in here a little bit more because it's not just formal, first course, second course, dessert. And then neither of us really got to work there for the most part, which is really sad. But I knew that there was no way I could do that alone.
Yeah, and
that's the shortest, simplest answer.
I want to reflect on something real quick about your relationship with Will and your emotional intelligence to self-reflecting and say, hey, like, I'm not that great at these certain things. I think a lot of people get in their own way because they're afraid to admit to their team that they're not good or not the best at something. But you recognize in Will that he was better at certain things than you were. And instead of trying to have that owner mentality of like, it's my way or the highway, like I need to create this image of being perfect to my employees, like you said, you know what, like I could get out of the way and let Will focus on all these things that he rocks, where I could be the visionary, the dreamer, and focus on the food and the creative element.
Sure.
And you got in your lane and you stayed in your lane, and you relieved that pressure of all the other things that weren't your sweet spot. Talk about the power of that, of just being able to relieve what.
Yeah, the goal was for me to never touch a POS system again. No joke, actually. I think that's just what we've been doing.
I think you kind of explained it enough already. We don't need to get into it any further, but I just wanted to put the emphasis on there.
Sure.
To get out of your way. And you can go so much further sharing the pie than you could ever go trying to keep the little pie to yourself.
100%.
Right? Share that pie. So some people are cringing right now. I know there's some consultants out there cringing right now, but it's just what I believe. And it sounds like you believe that too. So bringing it back to Hen of the Wood in Burlington, it sounds like this is when you started to transition out of working in the business to working on the business.
100%. Yeah.
Take us through that transition and what it looked like.
The build out was something we had never done. First of all, we had a designer buddy with us. We had a kitchen buddy helping us out design the kitchen. There were attorneys involved and leases, and we had a lease on the other place, but it's a pretty boilerplate. Took a long time to open, a bunch of delays with the build out of the hotel and then the build out of us. We leased space from the Hotel Vermont. Upon opening, there was a lot of great energy behind us. The original idea was we didn't imagine Hen Waterbury lasting forever. We don't own the building. Our relationship with the landlord isn't the best. Let's call this place Hen of the Wood, because should Waterbury ever close, I would hate to lose that. Like, that Hen of the Wood was like my soul if we were ever to close. The plan was to never have more than one Hen of the Wood. Just a little backstory on why we have two. It has confused customers. It's confused tourists. It's just sort of worked out for us, and we were sort of able to have this city hen, country hen. But so we opened with a lot of energy, a lot of excitement. Everything worked out for the most part from day one. We have people that have been with us from day one at Hen Waterbury that moved over to there, people that were back servers or managers, cooks that are chefs. It all just did its thing. Like, we slid right in with a lot of good juju behind us, and we stayed true to what made Hen Waterbury special and just sort of did that on a little bit grander scale. And that's still holding there right now. Like, Hen Burlington is as exciting today as it was on day one. And it's fully not because of William and I. It is 100% because of the managers there now. Like, letting them run certain parts of the program, have full control. We change the menu every day, but Chef Jordan has been with me for a long time. It is fully his food. It's rooted in mine, but it is fully his if you go eat there right now.
So take us through that transition, how you transition from being the creator, the creative power behind everything, and then relieving that creativity to somebody else and trusting them with what you've worked so hard, that reputation to build. Like, how do you pass
I don't think there's another way.
Yeah.
If not, you would go crazy, which we do go crazy every day as it is with all the minutia of random things that need to be done properly.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, just if I were to try to stay fully on top of everything he's doing, and then Chef Antonio and Waterbury, like, it would drive me mad. Like, they need to be given the freedom to grow and do their thing. And until they mess something up, They won't hear from me unless there's a problem, as opposed to starting like, hey, do this, do this, do this. It's not until there's a hiccup or a trip that we would then be like, hey, I think can we pull back on the such and such? Can we, not cover every dish in microgreens or who knows what, like whatever things come up.
Yeah, you want to relinquish that creative freedom because that's what's people need that, especially in this industry. But how do you relinquish that creative freedom while maintaining the brand in the essence of what Hen of the Wood is?
That is the big question. That is all we're working on now. So that is really trying to establish true definition of who we are. Why do we exist? How do we do it? How are we going to do it? Translate that information to our managers, making sure they have what they need, so then they translate it to the next crew. Like, okay, that's the whole magic experiment that's happening right now.
So if somebody else is going through this same challenge you're going through, and it sounds like you've gotten some practice getting those thoughts out, getting that brand out, getting that essence out, what's that look like? What
Yeah, that look for us, we call that our story worth living. It's a 1-page document. It's like a mission statement on steroids. It just says who we are, how we're going to do business, how we're going to treat each other, things like that. So when you come to work at Hen, when you get your little employee packet, it's not just the mission statement. You get this story worth living and a handful of other little documents that just try to peek behind the scene at who we are without sounding, at the very beginning of those exercises, they sounded corporate-y to me and not real. So you had to be really honest with yourself when you're writing them. And hopefully if you do that, then it comes across appropriately to the new staff. And I think we accomplished that. So right now what we're working on is how does Doc Ponds, Pro Pig, Hen of the Wood, 3 completely different brands interact under the same sort of umbrella. We have Heirloom Hospitality is what we call our crew. We don't really use that publicly too often, but everything is owned under Heirloom Hospitality, and all these documents are under Heirloom Hospitality's document stuff. How do we translate that to every person who walks in the door here, whether it's a dishwasher or a chef or a GM?
Yeah. So, I mean, what's happening here is whatever it is, whatever defines who you are, what your values are, what your vision is, what your mission is, has to be committed to paper, because otherwise you'll drift over time. You'll have new people come in, or you'll forget what you committed to, and over time you drift from the center line. You get away from what really matters to you. But if you commit it to writing, then it's there. It's an anchor. When you start to drift, you can say, "Hey, this isn't who we said we are. Look, it's right here."
Sure.
And that's your center line. You get right back on that. But if you don't have it committed to writing, then how do you, unless you're just like one of those freaks that can remember every little detail. I'm not one of those people.
Well, it was more that paper also was a way for our staff to hold us true. When we opened Doc, we had a handful of center of the plate proteins that weren't local. And we had some staff be like, dude, this is not what you guys are about. We know Hen of the Wood. We know what your history is. Why are we doing this? Just raise the price a few bucks, and we have to change this. This is not what we signed up for.
And that's when
within a week happens, it was like that was all local. It was like, you're right, we messed up.
That's the power right there. That's the perfect example of correcting a drift and empowering your people to be able to say, hey, when we're drifting, feel free to speak up.
Yeah, speak truth to power, man. All that matters is who's right. I mean, is what is doing the right thing. Yeah, not who it is.
I love it. So we didn't even talk about how you had this opportunity for Doc Ponds, and then this is something I'm really interested in, because it must be the taking over Prohibition Pig, because you retained all the original team members that were
for the most part. A couple people moved on, but for the most part.
Okay, so first was Doc Pond 2015. How did this opportunity present itself to you?
Super simple. Landlord called, who we know. It's actually the contractor that built out Hen of the Wood Burlington, and said, I have this space. These guys are out. It's a small spot. You guys have any interest in putting a bar in Stowe? It had never been part of the plan. Over the course of the next couple of months, we created this idea of Doc Ponds, this little brand that goes with it.
It's a fun brand.
It's super fun because Hen, we're sort of, which has been fine for us, but Hen doesn't play a lot. With Doc, it's just all it is playtime. But we can still do food that's we believe in, but it's a little bit more accessible to everyone. There's a $9 burger on the menu, things like that. You can come in. We have this 1,000 album vinyl collections, awesome beer program, really cool cocktails. Yet you can get out of there with spending $20.
So this is your third restaurant you've opened at this point. What did you learn up to this point? How did you open this restaurant differently because with the experience that you had under your belt at this time?
Well, now we're 2 in, so the business plan is that much more dialed in. Our relationship with our accountant is that much more dialed in. Our ability to find money from the community is easier. All things are just done a little bit better, a little bit cleaner, a little bit more with an eye towards the future. Some staff is built in, but at this point, you can't roll the dice like we could in 2005. Like at this point now, we have 70 employees at that point. You know, with Doc, there was 100. With here, there's 167. Like, if we were to do more projects, all of a sudden now we're putting a lot of people at risk here. Like, you can't just go wing it.
Yeah, there's something to be said about early on when you're starting. You have nothing to lose.
Right.
You have nothing to lose. But when you start being, when you have everything to lose, you know, you really got to start being careful about what you commit yourself to because of the people that are depending on you, right?
Sure. Yeah, big for real. We have people that, like I said, have been with us for a very long time. Mm-hmm. If we were to close up shop today, they would have to really think long and hard what their next move is because they've been under this umbrella for so long. So,
got you. So, transitioning to 2018 Prohibition Pig, take us through a little bit of the history of Prohibition Pig before you.
Sure. So, I've been friends with the owner before the Pig opened. This was the home of the Alchemist before they have their big, beautiful brewery in Stowe. It was flooded in Tropical Storm Irene. They moved out. Prohibition Pig moved in 2012. I live up the street. We followed the. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say the Alchemist. That's the brewer of Heady Topper. Maybe,
yes.
So maybe that is ringing a bell with some of the listeners.
100. So this is the building where that started in that brewery.
Beautiful. Okay.
So this is one of our town bars, and Chad's one of my close buddies, Chad Rich, who opened this place. We connected. Besides being good friends, we had the same vision of sort of what makes things charming. We both come from the South. There's an element to the South, to the Pig, that I was always sort of jealous of. He got to keep one foot in the South, which I've always wanted to do, but we've never had the opportunity with Hen of the Wood or
So
Doc.
they're doing smoked barbecue.
Yeah, we do whole hog. You know, the core is Eastern North Carolina whole hog barbecue, but there's enough for everybody here. Yeah. It's not just a hardcore barbecue restaurant by far.
So to kind of paint the picture for the listeners, if they're not familiar, Prohibition Pig, it wasn't like they were like a failing restaurant. Like, they were known. Like, this was a destination. They had something special going on. Usually when you see one restaurant group absorb another restaurant, it's because there's somebody trying to, you know, there was a failure or like whatever. What was like unique about this transaction? Like,
well, I think Chad had the past year or so had maybe was not as interested in running a restaurant.
Okay.
He was starting to spend some more time back down south. We had been talking for quite a while about whether maybe our group would just manage the restaurant. We've never done something like that before. Yeah. It sounded like a cool challenge. We'll come in as the management company. Chad, you're free to check out, hold us accountable, pay us whatever. We'll figure this out. You know, talks like that for a year or more. And then we crossed paths the end of the summer, and he threw out, what about just buying it if we can figure out a deal? So it literally took us 6 or 7 months to get a deal because we're both good buddies. Nobody played hardball. No one tried to screw the other. It took us a long time just to get everything on paper. But I think we were the natural people to buy it. Like, I have roots in this town. I have roots in the South. I have brewing roots in my family. I hang out here a lot. It just seems like if someone around here is going to buy this place, it has to be us.
Yeah. So what advice do you have for somebody who's entering into that type of relationship, or they're taking over a existing restaurant that's kind of turnkey, where you're just kind of transitioning in as the owner? Like, what advice do you have for that transaction?
That's a hard one. Like, slow and gentle, I think. We're still doing it. We're only 6 months in. You can't come in guns blazing. You have to get to know everybody. We obviously wanted to make some changes right off the bat, but they have been slow coming compared to what William and I would normally do. It was like, we don't like that, change it, go.
Yeah.
Buying a restaurant has been a whole nother experience that although I think because we knew the Pig so well, it seemed okay. I don't imagine buying businesses after this. I just don't see that as part of it's not a carrot we're chasing. Okay. This was sort of an anomaly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting situation because, like I mentioned, it's not like you put the Prohibition Pig on the map. It was on the map
fully,
and they had a good something going on, right?
Yeah.
So you don't want to like lose that. So were your cultures kind of aligned? How much was different?
Yeah, we wanted to get up underneath it.
Okay.
Some culture had definitely slipped away.
Okay.
As Chad had been more interested, was struggling to be a people manager. I don't think that's what he wanted to do. He's awesome at the brand. He built this really cool place. This place is super fun. There's just being in this room. There's like random cool crap in here. Yeah. I think when it came to dealing with management of people in a restaurant, he maybe got tired of that.
Yeah.
And at that point, things can just start to slip away. Like there may be just as many bodies walking in the door, but is everyone having fun? Is the staff having fun? Is the staff happy? I have a feeling that there was a handful of people here that were questioning whether they're going to stay for the long term. Us buying it caused, I think, excitement in some and fear in others.
Yeah.
More change, more instability. Who knows what these guys are going to bring? I'm sure they these guys own these fancy restaurants. They're going to come in here and do X, Y, Z. Who knows what everyone's thinking? But any kind of change like that is fearful, creates fear. So I think you have to be really gentle and speak up. Tell them your interests, where you're coming from, what you want to see the pig be. What do you want to see the pig be? We'll do it together. We've made some little changes, but nothing sweeping. Little things are coming as we get to know it more, get up underneath it, try to make it our own without changing it.
Beautiful.
That's what the whole goal is too. Like it's ours. This is heirloom hospitality now.
I'm loving this conversation. We're kind of at current time now. And this is typically when I ask my guests, is there anything that you were hoping we would talk about, anything that you think we should talk about, added expertise, areas that you think needs to be addressed in the industry, like just hot topics, anything you want to go to right now?
I think what the industry really deserves is a little bit more of a gentle hand, realizing that people need to have a work-life balance, that the restaurant industry is not just this place where you're supposed to be slogging it out. We don't want you trading time for a paycheck. You have to have some real values and morals so that your personal life aligns with what you're doing while you're in here for 10 or 12 hours a day. I think, and this would really go for any business, but I don't remember the author, but the whole start with why, getting deeper into why are you here? Why are you doing this?
Yeah,
we can say Simon Sinek, I'm here to cook the best steak. It's no, we're not. We're here to be a good partner in our community. And we're here to make people feel good, number one. Well, then how do you do that? Well, you do that by cooking a good steak, and you be really gracious, and you're polite, and you talk properly, and you keep a clean restaurant. You flip the script a little bit.
Yeah.
And then what the outcome is well, then you have financials. If you're going into it to make money, that's the third thing on the list.
Yeah.
So really taking care of your people and having a clear vision. I think I would say that now after 13, 14 years, that's the thing. Clear vision and make sure your people are taken care of. If we can keep that going every day, I think there's no reason why we wouldn't last forever. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure we have staff that are wanting more from us, but we're doing our very best to make that be our core vision.
I love it. So the mission statement of Restaurant Unstoppable is to inspire, empower, and transform the industry. And behind every great restaurant's a great person. So how have you transformed since 2005 as a business owner? Who are you today versus who you were then?
I'm way, way less self-centered or self-concerned. My goal is to make everyone feel good who works here. I've been lucky to have my name on I've gotten a couple awards. I'll get to do this fun stuff with you.
I didn't mention the awards in the intro. I'm trying to get away from awards because I don't want people to think that it's about the awards.
In which it really isn't, especially nowadays.
From 2008 to 2017, you were nominated consecutively for James Beard. Yep. So it's just incredible what you've accomplished. I want to give you that nod. It's really
We've
incredible.
been lucky, I think, too, to be a big fish in a small pond. Yeah.
We're back, and the first question I have for you is, what is your it factor? A habit, a trait, a characteristic you believe most contributes to your success?
Gosh, I think we have strong vision, like I was saying, for real.
It's powerful.
I think that's our best thing we have going.
What is your biggest weakness?
Oof. I can be a little harsh or a little quick, maybe, I think.
How are you
I don't
dealing
mean
with
to
that?
be.
How are you dealing? You recognize it, which is good. But how are when you recognize it, that
It
quickness?
can't be an email, number one. We have to talk face to face. Apparently my emails come across too harsh, but I think I'm just trying to hit all the points quick. But yeah, so we have to sit down face to face.
Got you. What is one question you ask or thing you look for when you're building your team during that interview process?
Gosh, it's really just what do you want to be doing? That's it.
And what are you looking for?
It doesn't have to be the restaurant industry, but you have to have a bigger understanding of, food, history, culture, booze. Is that enjoyable to you? Do you have fun with that? Like, you should be proud when you walk in these buildings. Like, there's cool stuff in all of these places.
Yeah. What is your biggest challenge today?
Getting to know everybody.
How are you overcoming that?
Day by day. Yeah. Taking on the pig is big. There's a lot of people here.
I bet.
Yeah.
What is one code of conduct, a core value, a way to behave that you teach your team?
Gosh, if we can just be open and polite, really, like kindness. Kindness wins, period.
I love it. What is one one uncommon standard of service you teach your team, a way to go above and beyond what's expected from the guest?
I don't know if there's one that is number one, though, for us. The gracious hospitality is just the term we always use. I can't pick of one thing.
What
really.
is gracious hospitality?
Well, I think we're just here to take care of you. Once you walk in the door, we got you. Like, the idea that it's not about the best steak or not. It's about, is this your favorite place to hang out? If it is, then we win.
I love it. What is one book to make us a better person or restaurant operator?
Right now, it's The Radical Candor.
Okay.
Yeah.
First time mentioned on the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What's it about?
Care personally, challenge directly.
Care personally, challenge directly.
That's
What
the
do you
whole
mean by
shtick. It's 2x2 graph. If you can end up in right there where you're caring personally but challenging directly, that's you're being honest. You're letting people know what you need. You're letting people know it's not acceptable. You're showing them what success looks like.
I love it.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Great book and great podcast. Yeah.
This is episode 625. Head over to restaurantunstoppable.com/625. We'll have a link to that book. And also, if you guys don't listen to do you listen to audiobooks? Is that something that you leverage?
Often.
Not too often. That book is probably on audio. It sounds like it's pretty popular.
Oh,
so.
That one is one of the only ones I've been listening to.
Yeah, so head over to audibletrial.com/unstoppable. And if you're not listening to audiobooks, you can get that one for free. Game changer, in my opinion. What is one thing you believe restaurateurs don't do well enough or often enough?
Man, I don't know. That could be a big list. There's a big picture element that's missing from a lot of restaurants. How does someone feel right when they walk in the door? Mm-hmm. Is it clean? Is someone smiling at them?
I think we get so lost in the details every day, or we get tunnel vision on one section, we lose sight of the big picture.
Yeah, it really is not just about having a tasty meal.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, that's second, third, fourth on the list, I believe, deep down.
I love it. Okay, this is the last question. Actually, it's not. I skipped one. My bad. What is one piece of technology you've adopted within your four walls that's had a huge impact on operations, communications, efficiency, profitability, anything around those lines?
Gosh, you'll have to ask William that. I miss the days when everything was handwritten. But we have all the tools and gadgets and all the back end systems that seem every year there's a new middleman
all right,
to help us.
I'll make sure to put extra pressure on William when he's up next. All right, this is the last question. If you got the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of you, your work, and your restaurants would be lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom, 3 things you know to be true that you could leave behind for the good of humanity and for your legacy. What would those 3 things be?
Oh my gosh,
it's a tough one.
That's a tough one.
It's deep.
I mean, it's really so simple though, right? It's just be nice to each other.
That's one.
Be kind, be gracious.
We'll count
that
that
the
as
same thing.
We'll count that as 1 and 2. What's the third one?
You're putting me on the spot too much. Yeah,
that's what I do.
I think that plug in, dig deep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'll take it. Awesome. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much, Chef Eric. We wrap up every chat by calling somebody out. So who's one independent operator, somebody that you respect and admire and believe would be a great guest mentor on the show like you made for us today? You can't say will.
No, I'd love for you to go meet Steve Adkins at the kitchen table in Richmond.
Steve Atkins, look out. I'm coming after you. Is Richmond, Vermont or Virginia?
Yeah, it's one of the jobs I had in between.
Look out, Steve. I'm coming after you. I'd love to get you on the show. And let the folks at home know, how can we connect with you if we want to check out your work? Maybe come join your team. What's the best way to connect?
The best way is just email. Yeah. Eric@henofthewood.com.
All right. I'll have that email in the show notes. Again, this is restaurantunstoppable.com/62. Did I say 5? 625. I'll have a summary of today's discussion over there, a link to all the tools, services, books recommended, and how to connect with Eric. Chef, thank you again for taking the time to share your knowledge.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Oh, man, there is no questioning. You are unstoppable.